Okay, we're going to begin our lunch fireside chat. Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Woolridge, Deputy Executive Director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I hope you found the morning sessions to be engaging and helpful as you go about the work of making Michigan a more accessible and inclusive state. Prior to my current position, I was a staff attorney with MDCR for 18 years with a specialty in disability-related civil rights matters. I was Michigan's Title II ADA coordinator and director of the ADA Compliance Division for 3 years prior to becoming the Deputy Executive Director in August of 2021. All of these roles gave me perspective on the challenges facing persons with disabilities. The enormity of MDCR hosting a summit specifically dedicated to disability concerns is not lost on me, and I trust it's not lost on you. We know that disability touches everyone, all races, genders, ethnicities, and ages, and people at every socioeconomic level. If you don't have a disability now, you very well may in the future. And the vast majority of us who do not have a disability care deeply about someone who does. Disability has grown to be the number one complaint filed with MDCR. The growing number of complaints, the increased awareness of barriers and concerns for what the future may hold for our hard-won victories make now the right time to take on disability rights in a conscientious and collaborative way. This July, we celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I encourage everyone to let this milestone inspire us to work together to bring down the remaining barriers to full inclusion and accessibility. I now want to introduce our lunch plenary, a fireside chat with disability rights attorney and advocate, Claudia L. Jordan, who will be interviewed by MDCR's ADA Compliance Manager, Tiara Yakini. Claudia Gordon is a dedicated advocate for people with disabilities with over 30 years of professional expertise and a personal mission to ensure equitable opportunities for all. Her lived experience as an immigrant at the intersections of race, disability, and gender informs her work with a strong emphasis on disabled individuals with multiple marginalized identities. She currently serves as the Senior Accessibility Strategist with T-Mobile USA, Inc., driving strategies for a disability-inclusive culture and an accessible, equitable work environment. Claudia has held senior leadership positions with Sprint Corporation, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the National Council on Disability, and the National Association of the Deaf Law and Advocacy Center. During the Obama administration, she served as Chief of Staff for the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs and Associate Director of Public Engagement for the White House Office of Public Engagement. She also served as Chair of the National Council on Disability. Claudia has been widely recognized for her work with accolades from the American Association of People with Disabilities, Google, AT&T Humanity of Connection, National Disability Mentoring Coalition, National Association of the Deaf, National Black Deaf Advocates, and the Route 100. A native of Jamaica, she is a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority and a graduate of Howard University and American University's Washington College of Law. Please give a warm welcome to Claudia and Tiara.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tiara speaking. Thank you so much, Deputy Director Woolridge, for that very warm welcome. I am a dark-skinned African-American female. I am wearing a light blue suit and a white blouse. I have curls in my hair, and I am very excited to be here today with the one and only Claudia L. Gordon. I am going to just jump right into this conversation because I'm excited to see all of the information that she has to share, and I'm sure you all are eager to hear from her as well. So, Ms. Gordon, my first question for you is, in your work as a senior accessibility strategist at T-Mobile, you have been positioned at the intersection of corporate culture and disability inclusion. How do you translate your extensive experience in civil rights enforcement and disability rights advocacy into tangible strategies that foster a truly accessible and equitable work environment? And what broader lessons can sectors glean from this approach?
Well, thank you so very much for that question. First, I want to say good afternoon to everyone out here. It is a packed room, and I am thrilled to be here today. I'm so glad to have Tiara. I want to thank you to Harold and Tyra, everyone who is involved in this get-together today, this summit. It has been great. I think that I'm going to take a moment to self-describe myself. I am a Black woman with a curly hair, also a bright blue blazer I'm wearing with a sparkly top. It's probably shouldn't be wearing it because I'm signing. I know better with my attire, but you know, sometimes you want to be cute, right? So excuse me. I'm wearing bright orange pants as well. And you are hearing the voice of Sarah Houston, who will be my sign language interpreter while I am signing. And I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I want to dive right into your amazing question. There is a lot of ground that I could cover to respond to that question, but I do have some notes, and I wanted to make sure that I hit some key points today. So bridging the civil rights into the work world is a unique position, and I've been advocating for that since a young age. I started out in high school. I was probably about 16 years old. And so with my career journey, I was in nonprofit. I was a community activist. I've been involved in government agencies, worked at the White House. I was on the streets protesting, and now out in the work world. I believe that disability rights and civil rights have a common thread. It doesn't matter what sector that you are, the fundamental policies and principles are the same. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Everybody deserves a fair shot to grow and to pursue their dreams and work hard. And so I apply that in every endeavor that I've worked in. And now at T-Mobile, where I am leading the accessibility and decentralizing the company, I think it's important to remember that disability inclusion and access isn't just about compliance. That's not what it's just about. It's truly about human rights and dignity. It is about your organization, my company, your company, government agency, your brand, your promise, your values. It's about people like me and so many others here in this room. We just want an opportunity to contribute. We want an opportunity to thrive. We want the dignity of a good education and the benefits of a good job. So that's what disability inclusion and access is about, is remembering it is about people. A few examples that I have at T-Mobile where I'm at, maybe my strategies will help you guys a little bit in what I do. So when I got there and I got into that role, I was very intentional about identifying all of the key function groups or teams. In my world, we say function group. So I identified those with the most prominent accessibility touch points, like human resources, reasonable accommodations in that team, learning development, focusing on developing our training, brought that to the forefront. The onboarding team, that's the first encounter that an individual has when they get offered a job, right? So bringing them on. And corporate communications. So I identified all those key teams, all those function groups, and I identified individuals. And I called them my accessibility champions. Those were my contacts. And sometimes there was none, but I worked to grow that and had those champions, and they became some of the most fierce advocates for disability inclusion. Sometimes the business unit, they don't have any idea on what they're supposed to be doing until I get there. And it's not a gotcha moment or I caught you type thing, but this work is so important. As individuals with disabilities ourselves, we are professionals. We're providing a space for people to make those mistakes. We meet them where they are. We don't shame them. We don't lecture them. No, this is a journey, and we're all on this journey together. So with that, I call my accessibility ecosystem. That's what I call it. So it's important that these agencies and governments know that ecosystem and who's responsible for doing what, that the right hand and the left hand are having those conversations and getting smarter, working smarter and not harder. While we're having different teams crossing in, and when, say, there's an emergency that comes up and happens, you know who to go to resolve those challenges, to make sure that they are offering the correct support. At the same time, they're listening to the feedback of their employees as well. It is important.
This is Tiara speaking. Thank you so much for the information that you shared. I really love the idea of accessibility champions and creating an accessibility ecosystem. I also love that you really brought the theme of today's summit to the forefront, accessibility beyond compliance. So thank you again for your response. Right now, I want to get a little bit personal, if that's okay, Ms. Gordon. And I want to talk about your journey from Jamaica to becoming a leading disability rights advocate in the United States. I really think that experience offers a unique perspective. And so I'm hoping that you can reflect on whether your national origin presented any distinct challenges or even advantages in accessing disability-related resources and services. And also, what broader implications might this have for immigrant communities with disabilities?
Great question. I think with the national origin, that's a lens that I use. I am Black. I am a deaf woman. I am an immigrant. That's a lot of marginalized communities that I am a part of. From my experiences looking back, I think the biggest challenge is I came here and I had my mom, who only had an 8th grade education. She was a smart woman, but she wasn't familiar with the United States and their systems for Medicaid and medical things. For me, being deaf, her job didn't provide that. And so all those social services and that system was really tough for her to navigate. Especially with individuals who are low income, from another country, and also, the system itself. It has its own biases and prejudices. Because of what I look like, my zip code, I was from the South Bronx. I'm from the inner city. And I'm deaf on top of that. I'm a woman. So, yes, I encountered a lot of prejudices and biases. The system was not designed for people like me or my mom. They didn't have us in mind when they designed it. And it really showed up in the VR, vocational rehab. I came in and I said, I want to go to Howard University, HBCU. And they're like, why don't you gonna go to LaGuardia, that community college? And so I call that steering. And they were steering me away from the goal that I set for myself, my expectations that I had for myself. They were up here. And the system, in the vocational rehab system, they looked at me and thought I should be down here. And I have seen that happen with a lot of my friends and peers, being victims of that steering and that low expectation because of racism and prejudices, because I don't fit the norm of a typical client. But fortunately, I have somehow was resilient enough to keep going to my goals. And so, part of how I would respond is not necessarily based on the national origin. It's a large part of the challenge as I look back. The lack of cultural competency of that type of a provider, or even a provider who could sign. And so representation in social services in that system is important, so that someone like me could show up to the Social Security Administration office or to vocational rehab or all these different social services agencies, and they can go in and see someone who looks like me or who understands me and speaks my language and who is sharing my goals with me and wants the best for me as well. That cultural competency is so important.
This is Tiara speaking. Thank you for underscoring the importance of representation in social services. You mentioned steering being a challenge, but I also know in researching your background that your early educational experiences really played a role in your journey. In fact, I learned that while you were in high school, your involvement with mock trials was instrumental in setting you on your career path. So for me, your story really brings home the importance of ensuring that all young people have access to enriching and inclusive opportunities. So I thank you again for sharing a little bit of your personal testimony with us today. You have also powerfully spoken about owning your identity within the context of intersectionality. For our audience, can you please provide a concise definition of intersectionality and then elaborate on what it truly means to own one's multifaceted identity, particularly when it comes to spaces where multiple marginalized identities converge?
Intersectionality. It's more than just a buzzword. We use it a lot, right? You hear it a lot. Every day you are hearing intersectionality. And I have to give that credit to Kimberly Crenshaw. She coined that term back in the late 80s. So I definitely want to credit her for coming up with that term and how we've been using it. But in short, what it means is that we recognize individuals have multiple identities that overlap, like race and gender, disability, immigration status, sexual orientation, gender identity. All of those are multiple layers. And that's what intersectionality is. So you mentioned my TEDx talk. Fun fact here. Earlier, the keynote speaker, Rebecca, and we did our TED Talk at the same time at the University of Rochester. Hello, over there. It was an interesting journey to determine my my talk because, I realized through life for many years, especially because I had gotten this disability when I was 8 years old, and I struggled with where do I fit in and where do I belong. I'm part of so many marginalized communities. There's Black, the deaf community, but I never truly, truly felt like I had a perfect fit in any of these situations. Oftentimes, almost every day, I would find myself feeling excluded from one or the other communities that I should be a part of, but that community looks down at me. I show up to Howard University and I'm struggling to get interpreter services. I almost had to sue. Don't get me wrong now, I love Howard, I do. But, you know, when my first semester when I went into there, it was just truly a battle just for communication access. And here I am. I'm in a Black community, right? I'm at a HBCU. But they saw me as disabled and deaf and that I could never fit in. I had opportunity to go to Gallaudet University. They offered me a full ride, a full scholarship. But I knew Gallaudet had its own issues of racism there. And it's very prominent there. It's a reality for the first 80, 90 years of the college's history, they segregated Black deaf. That's the history of this country and of Gallaudet. It's a great university, but racism is there, and so I had to choose between the two. So I can face discrimination based on race or face discrimination based on my disability. And then I'm a woman, and they're looking at me like, why are you here? You should be a disability advocate, and it's like, I'm a woman. I care about women's rights, reproductive rights. But the point is, with my TEDx talk, it was like the point of time in life where you're radical with your self-acceptance. And it's a painful journey. But each of us will realize it doesn't matter how far you get in life. You live in a society that is constantly whispering that we're not enough. So I had to reach a point where I had to realize I am where I am in life. And it's not despite of what I am, but because of what I am. And it doesn't happen overnight. But I'm proud to be able to say that today. Some final thoughts here? I would say, please own your worth, own your power, and your voices. Regardless of what's going on around you every day, we know we encounter some oppressions every day in the world. It's not anything we can avoid. Possibilities for me, I used to think it was impossible. You have to dream big and know that there's a starting point. You have to translate those possibilities to become actions and doing the work. And you have to continue to self-advocate as a person with disabilities every day. And that's a burden to advocate for ourselves, but it's real. We have a lot of doors that are slammed in our faces. We get a lot of no's. And so I encourage you to try to reframe that no. And so what that means could be no, okay, next opportunity.
This is Tiara speaking. Thank you so much for your transparency today. I think it's very interesting how you highlighted the discrimination that can take place even within the context of your specific identities. And I really think that speaks to the nuances of intersectionality. While we are on the topic of intersectionality, I want to talk about inclusive policy development and its potential impact. So for those in our audience who do not know, inclusive policy development refers to the process of creating policies and strategies that take into account all of the diverse needs, perspectives, and experiences of all individuals and groups within a society. So, Ms. Gordon, you have had a remarkable career influencing policy across crucial agencies like the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Labor, and the National Council on Disability. So I am sure that you have some compelling insights that you can offer us on the power of inclusive policy development. What comes to mind for you as you reflect on its significance?
Thank you for that question. I think we all know that when diverse voices are at the table, the end product is better. It's a better representation of everyone's interests and needs. We, as humans, we're quick to say representation matters. It should matter, but not when it's about you, not just when it's about you. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Representation matters. Therefore, look around the room and ask who's not here and why. I often walk into spaces that may be focused on women's issues, African American, Black issues, but I don't see any disabled people in the room. But those same people say representation matters. How can we ensure that we're complying with the strategy, to approach policy issues and policy making, but not from a single issue lens, more of an intersectional lens across identities, that lens. We would have more relevant, more robust response policies. Now, I also wanted to add, Rebecca talked about this briefly earlier, disability justice. I think it's important for the people who are at the table, those who are participating in the process of developing and drafting the policies, but also the framework that we use for policy. Disability rights really is rooted in a single issue lens. Disability, that's it. It's that lens. And prominently based on experiences of white disabled individuals, mostly men. People like me and other marginalized communities, we can have rights under the ADA, under IDEA, Section 504, but not necessarily being able to reap the benefits of those rights because of the system, racism, bias, prejudices within the disability rights system. Now, I hope you guys are following me here. So it is important to develop policy with the approach from a disability justice lens, but also looking from the lens of disabled people who are queer, disabled people who are Black, deaf, those multiple marginalized, because we're not always starting from the same starting point. So for me, for example, with the vocational rehab services, VR services, I have a right to that service, just like this person does. But I was denied a lot of things because of racism within the system. So we have to be able to approach it from an equitable standpoint. Remove the roots of inequity that comes with class, race, gender. And so the framework that we use to develop that policy is important. Everyone wins in a world where everyone can be fully participants. It's better for the world holistically. You know how they say injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere? So that's why inclusive policy is important.
This is Tiara speaking. So I heard you say, Ms. Gordon, that we need to approach policy development from a disability justice lens, welcoming diversity of identity in our approach. And I think that's going to be very important. Again, our goal for today is to drive change here in Michigan. And so I really hope that everyone was taking notes on what Ms. Gordon has shared today. I personally found this conversation very enlightening. I'm sure that our audience did as well. At this time, I am going to open the floor for questions from our audience. Before we do that, I have a few rapid fire questions for you, Ms. Gordon. While the note cards that are on the tables are collected, if anyone has a question, as a reminder, there are note cards that you can write your questions on. We have liaisons circulating the room to collect those. I also want to make everyone aware that for those who prefer to ask Ms. Gordon a question via either an ASL interpreter or a microphone, you will have that option as well. Please try to limit your comments or your questions to 60 seconds if possible, in respect of the time that we have and other people who may want to pose questions. So again, there are liaisons circulating the room. Please be on the lookout for them. And while they are moving around, I want to ask you, Ms. Gordon, what is a motto or a saying that you live by?
Oh, okay. Breaking barriers and building belonging.
This is Tiara. Can you repeat that?
Breaking barriers and building belonging.
Breaking barriers and building belonging. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? All right. This is Tiara speaking. We do have one question. What are ways that we can practice sustainable advocacy, especially when the burnout from constant effort is not talked about?
That is a great question. Burnout is real. And it doesn't matter who you are as a disabled person, how advanced you are in your career, we have to advocate every day for ourselves. And so I think it's important, a couple of things from my personal experiences. First thing is to have community. None of us can truly sustain this advocacy work, this fight for justice and inclusion on our own. We need to surround ourselves with people who can be there to offer that support, hear you out, give you advice. So Rebecca, who is here, we are, have a text thread, me, her, and a couple other women have a text thread. And on a bad day, I know I can text that group and they will be there for me to offer their support. And so have that support circle. Also, take a break. Create in moments for joy. Our life is defined by constant struggles and advocating for ourselves, feeling like we're inadequate. We're always on the bad stuff. Sometimes we just gotta, create those moments of joy. Joy is also a powerful form of resistance. Don't forget that.
This is Tiara speaking. Thank you, Ms. Gordon. We have another question from the audience. What can be done at the grassroots level to support inclusive change?
I consider myself a grassroots advocate. That's how I started at a very young age. I think today the movement feels different. It looks different. Sustaining change isn't simply about showing up at a rally with a cool sign and post it on social media. Check, that's done. That is not how Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks and all of those leaders before whose shoulders that we are standing on, that's not how they made change and led change. They had to walk across that bridge. Today, social justice, that movement is almost like it's just a cool social media post and then we're done. No, we have to be willing to do the hard work that is involved. You need to stay involved, be at the table, write those policy proposals, reach out to your congressmen and your representatives, participate in those town halls, sign those petitions. You have to, it's not a one and done thing. This is a constant and you have to show up. Show up. And for me, I choose to go into rooms where nobody looks like me and it's uncomfortable. But we have to get out of our comfort zones. And we have to meet the oppressor on their turf if we want to really change what's happening out here. And vote.
Tiara, we have a question from the audience. We have a question from the audience.
Hey. Hi, Claudia. Thank you so much for being here and speaking with us today. My name is Tony. I'm one of the co-founders of Association for the Advancement of Deaf and Hard of Hearing. We support deaf youth in Detroit, educational and occupational ways. But my question to you today was, what are ways that we can teach deaf youth advocacy skills in school when the school have low expectations of their educational outcomes?
Great question. You need to have that culture competency staff, teachers, and have that training. And if there isn't any, we got to get creative. Back when I was in high school, we had a student body government. And it was more of the privileged deaf people there. And most of them were white deaf students. My friends, deaf friends from deaf families, they signed more fluently. And then you have the other that may be Hispanic, or they were from a home where English is their first language, or is not their first language. And then we have people like me who've moved from Jamaica and just learning how to sign. So it could be an intimidating space, student government, for those who wish to join who wasn't a part of the privilege. And so what we did was set up a Black culture club. And I don't know if it's acceptable now, but we gave those students a space where they could be who they are. Just be you and show up and still be involved in leadership and still serve at the school. And we would bring in our own speakers, while the student body government was going on. I was involved with that, yes, but there was something missing. So I had to figure out creative ways to make space, whether it be weekends, on evenings, but I will be more than happy to talk with you about that because that's so important.
This is Tiara speaking. Thank you, Ms. Gordon. We have another question from the audience. It says, as a representative from a large corporation in Michigan, starting a disability employee resource group, what do you think is crucial for employers to recognize in supporting our employees with disabilities?
The last part of that again, please.
What do you think is crucial for employers to recognize in supporting our employees with disabilities?
A lot of things, but I think ERGs are great. My company has several employee resource groups. And you can join those different ERGs. There's a women's ERG for women with disabilities. There's Black Empowerment Network. I'm involved with that. I don't like to be put in a box. And so for the employer, the tone is set at the top. So if we set the tone at the top, that's important. I think it is important to talk about disabilities and talk about them in a way that is clear, that everyone is accountable. The duties of removing barriers and coming from a true place of service and making sure that accommodations are in the policies and that the closed caption is there. That is not our job as employees to fix these things. When you're talking about allyship, that means that you do something, you act when you see something. You don't just sit back and expect us disabled employees to point out everything that is broken when you guys see the same thing too. But it's not something that you need, so it doesn't bother you as much. So when I see employees who are not disabled raise their hand and say, oh, this app isn't accessible, I feel like, oh, I can rest. That's what allyship is. So employers have to set that tone from the top and normalize disabilities in the workplace and the value that we bring and our contributions to the bottom line. Because the businesses are here to earn money, right? I mean, this isn't a charity. This isn't a charity, right? And so we're looking at the disabilities as a market segment. Our spending power is equal or above the Hispanic and the Black market segments. And so it's about the company's bottom line. And that's an important message to give to them.
This is Tiara speaking. Thank you, Ms. Gordon. We have about 60 seconds left, and so I'm hoping you can answer these questions rather quickly. The first one is,
Real quick.
explain your view of mentorship, disability, life mentor, etc. How can we support this? Can you share examples? The other question is, how do we find ways to shift mindsets regarding those who don't want to change their attitudes, biases, and perceptions?
Okay, mentorship, it is a two-way street. I have a lot of people that coming to me and they want me to mentor them. Well, you've got to do work too. You've got to meet me halfway. I believe mentorship is important. Companies should set up opportunities, even in the government, set those opportunities up to happen for mentorship. I encourage that. I would not be here where I am today without a mentor or without coaching and all of those things. Sometimes you have to design it in a way that really meets people where they are with their identities. What was the last part of that?
The other question, this is Tiara speaking. The other question was, how do we shift the mindsets of those who don't want to change their attitudes, biases, and perceptions?
Quick reaction to that. You know, people, you have to remind them that this is about humanity. This is about people. We exist and we want to contribute to the world. We want to thrive. Disability is the only minority group that any person could be a part of at any time. So I think, therefore, to shift that mindset, you know, it can take a while, but if we can focus on the heart and the humanity and put real faces on the disability and in access inclusion, what is the result? You know, does it impact what food we serve the kids, where we send them to college, whether we have a roof over our heads? The quality of the medical care we receive? It's really a life impact. And so I would say bring it to the human level. Let's not keep it at the law and policy, but let's just humanize it, make it human.
This is Tiara speaking. Thank you so much, Ms. Gordon. That, unfortunately, is our time with Ms. Gordon today. We thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. I know that the insights that you've provided us on accessibility beyond compliance and the vital need to center experiences of all identities as we work towards meaningful policy changes will undoubtedly inform our efforts. So it was a genuine honor again to have this conversation, and I thank you for your time and expertise. Please join me in giving Ms. Gordon a round of applause.
This is Kim speaking again. Special thanks to Ms. Gordon for the inspiring Fireside chat. Thank, thank the interpreters. And thank you, Tiara, for moderating this Fireside chat. We will now move to the afternoon. Go ahead, applause. We will now move to the afternoon breakout sessions, which will repeat from the morning. Please join us back in this room after the afternoon breakout sessions for closing remarks and a guest reception. Thank you.